This is Horns Up. I'm Animesh.
And I'm Peter.
And we're celebrating the reissue of Conditioned Human by Myndsnare on this episode. The album was originally released in 2008 and has been reissued this month by Subcontinental Records. The reissue sports the same 9 songs, no edits, but with a shiny coat of audio paint on it, courtesy a remix and remaster by one of India's best sound engineers, Anupam Roy, who coincidentally also worked on the original release.
Now, this reissue naturally had us excited because Conditioned Human remains one of the bright sparks from the Indian metal landscape in the 2000s. Released originally by Sahil Makhija's Demonstealer Records, the album gained not only critical but popular appeal as well. In fact, I think it's safe to say that Conditioned Human is perhaps one of the few albums by an Indian act that both Animesh and I are fans of, right?
Absolutely. But it's not only us. The reissue prompted us to get nostalgic. And so here's a couple of bytes that will also help explain why the album and the band have continued to be remembered.
First up, you'll hear Sahil Makhija, aka the Demonstealer himself. And following him is Sohan Mageshwar, an IT nerd, but more importantly, a fellow metalhead.
My first introduction to KP actually was in 1998 or 1999. He had come to Bombay for the IIT festival as the guitar player of Trinity. And I just remember seeing this tall, lanky guy with long hair just flying on the guitar. And I was blown away by his precision and his skill. I met him, I think, a year or two later at Domination, the Death Fest at Raz, where he was walking around selling his solo album, Myndsnare. At that time, it was Myndsnare with a M-I-N-D, not a Y. And I remember listening to that record, and it just kind of went over my head at the time. But, over time, I kind of sort of understood what he was doing with the sound of the band. And I remember finally seeing them, I think, at NLS, and watching Yasmin play the drums just again blew my mind. I think there's a reason Yasmin is still remembered today as one of the best extreme metal drummers to ever come out of India. And, she's an absolute legend, and I'm proud that I can call them all my good friends. It's just been amazing to see the way they evolved as a band. I've seen them through all their different lineups, and then finally when the album was ready, it was an absolute honor for me to be able to release it on Demonstealer Records. It was an incredible sounding album, and I know there was a lot of discussion about them recording without the metronome, and you know what, if there was one band that I thought could pull it off, it was Myndsnare. That album brings back a lot of memories. The songs on that, if you listen to them today, they still sound as good as they did back then. So yeah, it was great to be associated with the band, and I'm happy to say that they're all good friends of mine. Fabulous musicians, fabulous people.
Hello, I'm Sohan from Bangalore. The mid-2000s was when I basically started going to a lot of live gigs, everything from engineering college fests to ones in like the shady bars in Bangalore. And honestly, I've been to gigs where there were more people on stage than in the crowd, but that was part of the fun. My memory of Myndsnare is through these countless live gigs, these small metal fests and gigs in these engineering college fests where I'd actually see them play live. In fact, one of the most memorable ones was at IMB back in 2007 with a bunch of other great bands like Cryptos and Bayanakmoth, if I'm not mistaken. I think what really stood out was that they were fast, they were brutal, they were technical, and all of this with just a 3-piece band. And they were always super tight on stage and sounded like crisp, I think. And that leads to the fact, that's from the fact that these guys are just really, really talented musicians at the end of the day. My two favorite tracks on Conditioned Human are Use the Pain and Layers of Hypocrisy. I think, again, I like these tracks the most is because it takes me back to the times I used to go to these live gigs. I can still hear KP introducing, Use the Pain in a live gig with that intro, and then, it really gets you with the brutality and the riffs later in that song. For me, the mid 2000s was this really nice time in the Bangalore rock and metal scene. It was this real sense of community, a lot of live gigs happening. And for me, Myndsnare formed an important part of that scene. So I'd be forever grateful for that. Good luck and congrats on the remaster. And if there's a reunion gig happening anytime soon, I'll be there. Cheers.
Now, naturally, we wanted to talk to Myndsnare themselves, but that took some work. I mean, the band as such has been defunct for quite a few years, and the three members are spread across the globe. Well, two of them, guitarist and vocalist KP Krishnamoorthy and bassist Sandesh Nagaraj, are in America, while drummer Yasmin Claire Kazi is on the other side of the sea.
Still, the power of emails helped, and we managed to chat with both KP and Sandy. Yes, we did try to get the three of them together, but well, let's just save that thought for another time.
Let's get into it then. Here's KP.
Hi KP, welcome to Horns Up. Where are you at the moment and what's keeping you busy these days?
Hey guys, I'm in Los Angeles. I've been here for like around a dozen years now. What's keeping me busy is our child, 1.5-year-old girl, and there's not much time for much else. But I work at Fender, the guitar manufacturer. It's a pretty freaking awesome place to be. And that's pretty much it. Other than riding motorcycles quite a bit.
We're here to talk about the reissue of your album, Conditioned Human, and it's like 13 years. I'm saying 13 years. Does it really feel like it's been 13 years?
It feels like it's been more, honestly, for me at least, because a lot of the songs on that album were written and played live for many years before we actually recorded it on that album. Like, for example, Layers of Hypocrisy or something like that was, I'd say 2003, 2004 is when we originally made the song and started playing it. So that feels like an ancient song. I actually used to hate playing that song even when we used to play live because it was an old song and we used to keep playing it. A couple of the songs are approaching 20 years. It does feel like a long time.
I'd like you to try and take us back to 2008. That's when the album released. What was the Indian metal landscape like at that time in the way you saw it, and what was the scene at the Myndsnare camp? What kind of headspace were you guys in?
The way we managed to get our music out in the scene that we ended up existing as a part of was mostly through college sponsored events and competitions and stuff like that, which is I've been out of touch for the last 10 years or so I don't know whether that's still one of the main draws for many bands to come together.
Unfortunately, no, man.
No?
Yeah, like DJs have taken over band pro nights and all that. Yeah.
That's terrible. But anyway, that was, I think, the major driving factor behind things, because you could complete imbeciles and still get to play in front of like a few hundred people. And that allowed you to fix what was wrong with your playing, with your songs, with your band, sound, all that stuff. And eventually get to a point where you actually made some sense when you went on stage and tried playing your music. So when we released it, we'd kind of gotten through a bunch of those kinds of shows. We played a lot of independently organized shows like Domination, the Death Fest a couple of times. Sahil organized Resurrection a few times, then Independence Rock. Those are some of the bigger ones, but a lot of other shows here and there as well. When we were releasing the album, it was kind of getting to be a transition point for us, where we were trying to see whether we could break out of the country and go outside and do something, maybe as a band, maybe as individual musicians or something. But before we did anything, we wanted to record the songs that were our favorites and play it a few times, put it on tape and CD and stuff like that.
Wow, it's crazy that you talk about college competitions, because I was looking up and you guys played at Riot, which was the one in Bombay, RIAT.
Right.
You guys played IIT Delhi and won also. And then, of course,
Delhi, Chennai. Yeah.
And then, of course, the big one, at least in Bangalore, is NLS, right? Strawberry Fields. I feel that's been the major shift in the last 10 odd years, right? In the Indian music scene, where, like you said, bands would actually get to hone their skills live. And it was brutal, right? To be honest.
I mean, I don't know whether it was brutal or not, because, I mean, at the end of the day, most of the guys in bands are not really in it for the money or anything. They aren't going to have to pay rent based out of things like that. So it's just a way to get in front of an audience. And the competition was pretty fierce. A lot of the shows, especially shows like NLS and stuff, where NLS was a good show to compete in. You'd have like 40 to 60 bands sometimes, spread out over 2 days. In the semi-pro thing is what they used to call it. And it had a reasonable amount of prize money as well. So if you won, I think like in 2006 to 2007 or something, it was 50 to 60,000 rupees or something like that. And it was interesting because like you ended up knowing most of the bands that kept playing shows like that. Like we met Sahil at shows like that. We met Cryptos, Trinity, Myndsnare, all the Bangalore guys. We basically met at shows like that. And NLS is a show where I've been going ever since like 98 or 99 or something. I think Yas played with one of her first bands called Angel Dust, which was a Bangalore band, back in 97 or 98, and they covered Judas Priest and stuff. I think the Sentinel or something like that.
Wow.
Which is pretty awesome. And so NLS was great. It was like, you go there, you meet all your metal family people, you hang out, and you're all there for a purpose. So it doesn't feel like you're just screwing around. You have your instruments with you. You have practice your ass off for that, and you get like a 20-minute slot in which you got to prove yourself. So that's not that easy like all the time. But the good thing about it is also like, especially looking at the scene in the US and stuff, you have a full backline. You have amps, a drum kit, you have everything. You just go with your guitar and a cable and you can plug in and you can play. Granted, a lot of people would get their FX processors and pedal boards and things like that. But the drummer basically just walks up and sets up a couple cymbals and a double bass pedal, and they can play. But here in the States, you got to like cart everything around in a van, and it's a pain in the ass. So that's one of the good things about that.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Sahil did mention to me that the first time he saw you play was not with Myndsnare, but this was, I think,
with Trinity, probably.
Trinity, yeah. You played with Trinity at Livewire, which is the IIT Bombay, or Mood Indigo, sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
That time that he first met you.
Yeah, that was in the 90s sometime, probably.
Wow.
Right? 2001 or something is when Myndsnare basically started happening. 2000 is when I put out that extremely shitty 4-song thing that I had like recorded at home with like an FM synthesis audio card that I could barely afford and stuff, which was extremely shit.
Wow. But
yeah, so I would have been in the 90s.
Yeah, but one thing I do remember is, at least, and this is where Sahil again plays a recurring role. I remember going to his house because at that time he was like stocking band CDs from all over India and stuff like that. And there was just like a CD with just the artwork, and it came with like a two-side printed two-side page thing with the lyrics, and that was a preliminary quest, and that was my first introduction to Myndsnare, actually.
I apologize.
It's a rare collector's item now.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I've got a couple copies sitting right there among the rest of the band stuff and all that. Yeah, that was interesting though, because that I basically recorded at home on computers that my dad had this computer rental thing going at that point. So I had access to computers, but at any moment they could be taken out and given out on rent. So it was a kind of complicated situation where I'll either have a computer on which I can record, or I'll only end up with a hard drive waiting for something to come back so that I can plug the hard drive in and be able to continue. So yeah, it was interesting, but that thing was recorded at home, plugging into a Creative Labs Sound Blaster card using a bunch of phono adapters. I don't even know how I managed to put that together. Like zero equipment.
Tell us, in terms of, at least from there, you talked about doing that. When
Right.
you look at Conditioned Human, right? You guys recorded it at Clay Kelton's studio, which you'll have tagged as Beware of Dog Studio.
Beware of Dog Studio. Yeah, he doesn't have a name for the studio. The only thing on the gate is Beware of Dog. So,
But tell me what it was like now making that transition into an actual studio in there.
Yeah, by the time we actually went to the studio, we had it wasn't as desperate times as back in 99, 2000 when I did the original thing. The difference in going to a studio was mainly the amount of finesse needed to record drums correctly, because mainly with drums, right, you can't really rework the sound that much. With guitar, it's possible, because what you can do is, like what we did do, is record all the dry tracks. And once we have the dry tracks, you can reamp it. You can put it through various kinds of modeling and things like that. So it's okay to screw up a little bit with the sound as long as the playing's fine. But with drums, you can't really do that with acoustic drums. You got to get the miking right. You got to get the skins tuned right. You got to make sure that you're not putting mics in a way that makes things go out of phase or something when you mix different channels in, because you can't recover from that. And once you move the drum kit, you can't get the exact same sound. So you aren't going to be able to screw up a song a little bit and then go back to the studio a week later, set up the drums again and patch in or something like that. It's not going to sound good. So that's a challenge, because that it has to be done right before you exit the place. And also, you're paying a lot more for a studio than you are when you're sitting at home and recording. So got to get that practiced. You got to get there on time, all that stuff. But Clay's studio was pretty cool. It was a pretty small place, but he had what we needed. He had a place for recording drums. He had a reasonable vocal booth, and he was pretty quick at tracking and all that. If we tell him to punch in here, start here, stop there, and stuff like that, he was adjusting to us really quick. So it was good.
Now, a recent interview that the band has done revealed that the album wasn't recorded to a click track.
Right.
And that takes balls, because especially at that time, and then especially with this kind of music, how did that decision come about, and how really did it affect pre-production as well as the recording process?
That was mainly something that Yas really wanted to do, because she felt that having a click track is going to make the music sound mechanical, because it already is kind of mechanical. It's like a lot of parts kind of, copy pasted together and made to flow, kind of, in some ways, you might say, because that's what the genre is. But if we recorded with a click track, it would probably be a little too perfect in terms of structure and tempo and things like that, and you would kind of lose the human element of it. And I absolutely disagreed with everything about that, but I got overruled, so we recorded without a click track. And in hindsight, I think that was the right choice, because it does sound a little more organic. And it did make life a lot harder when it came to recording guitars over it. So what we did was she recorded the drums first, and everything else was recorded on top of that. And we'd been playing those songs live for so much time that it was actually possible to do that. Like she knew the parts that well. She could hum the song in her mind and do it. So we recorded the drums, did the guitars at I think at my place at that time. I don't actually remember exactly where we recorded, but it was with our own equipment and the bass as well. And after doing that, we went back to the studio and recorded my vocals for that, because you need a decent place, acoustically decent room in order to record vocals. So we went back there.
Do you remember what was the most challenging song to record?
I think probably Use the Pain, because it's got some transitions where there's a lot of blank space before the next part comes in. And if the drums are already recorded, I can't just look back over my shoulder and see when she's going to come in and stuff. And there are certain live things, like, you count things in live that you don't do on an album. And if you don't have the count in to assist you, then, you got to like figure it out. And the figuring out happened by screwing up like 10 times and then figuring out exactly how much ahead or behind you are, and then getting it right after that. And the transitions were the hardest part. But thankfully, for a lot of the songs, there aren't blank spaces in the song. There aren't too many blank spaces in the songs. So when it's like that, it's okay. It's not that big a deal, because you can get the feel of the tempos changing and stick with it.
I have to say that even though it's not recorded on a click, everything just sounds so precise and sharp. I mean, especially the moment, and it hits you right from the time you begin the album, because Changing Skins itself begins with just staccato hits,
right,
with pauses. So excellent feat, especially to like I'm pretty sure everybody put in their work, and Clay too definitely must have had a huge hand in making sure that everything happened exactly the way you guys wanted it to.
Thank you. I think it was mainly Yas's precision that led to the thing overall sounding like that, because that's what the rest of us were following when we were recording our parts.
Conditioned Human was released at a resurrection show that Sahil, aka Demonstealer, organized in Mumbai, and you all played alongside Demonic Resurrection, Devoid, Exhumation.
Right.
Other than us showing you that video, do you have any kind of memories from that show?
Not very specific memories, honestly. I just remember feeling really happy that Rolling Stone India would actually deign to put our name on their cover and stuff like that, which was really cool. And going by that interview, I actually don't remember which show this happened at, but going by the interview that you showed me, I think it was at this show that I actually got a chip in my tooth from some guy in the audience headbanging, fell over onto the microphone hit my face, and we were playing a cover of Rain and Blood, Slayer's Rain and Blood, and it kind of broke my tooth, and it was interesting. We continued playing, obviously, because it's metal to do so, but yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting experience.
Yeah. Now you did mention Rolling Stone India, right? So what happens post the album release is that Conditioned Human manages to break through and get noticed in our scene, right? Like, here's everyone kind of talking about it. I mean, while that happened was because it was well received by publications all across the world also, right? I mean, you had Rolling Stone India in there, but all across. Why do you think that happened?
All across the world, I think it's partially at those times, it's just 10 years. It's not a very long time, but especially after moving to the States, I started realizing that people were continually surprised that there was a metal scene in India, because in a lot of senses, India is still seen to be the image that, all the tourist companies try to project. So, all the bullshit yoga stuff and all that. But it's probably something that people find interesting, because you don't think that extreme metal is going to come from a country like India. I mean, we know better, but if you tell me pick some random country that I have no idea about and I have a preconceived notion about it, and then you tell me that they've got this like serious tech death band or something, I might be surprised as well. So that kind of thing.
Actually, when I think about it, when I was looking up some of the reviews that were then, right, because some of these websites still are around, it starts off by saying like, oh my God, I didn't expect like a tech death metal band, or I didn't know there's like a death metal band in India.
Right. And honestly, I mean, we know that it wasn't that uncommon, right? Like there were many bands in India even at that time doing that kind of stuff. But, and right now there are even more. There are things people will automatically assume if they know you are from one place or another. And it is just what it is, because everyone doesn't know people from everywhere. That's all.
I know you're going to cringe at this, but hence giving you the heads up. But for me personally, the highlight for the album was Layers of Hypocrisy, right? Just the kind of way the track has kind of evolved, and now to hear it on the reissue, because I managed to I got a preview of it. It just kind of so many years, right? And it kind of brings back so many memories. Like I was telling you, buying the A Preliminary Quest EP. So yeah, that for me was the highlight of the album.
For me, it's always been Use the Pain and Temporal Movements, because
Use the Pain is my favorite.
Oh yeah, awesome! Thank you. And I'll tell you why. Because when I first heard Myndsnare, it was when I was getting into death metal, and how I was getting into death metal was through Chuck Schuldiner and through Death, and especially Symbolic, and especially A Sound of Perseverance, and maybe a little bit of Individual Thought Patterns. So after you've been listening to that, to discover that there's a band from your own country who's doing this kind of music, and especially Use the Pain, because it has both the techie heavy parts as well as the melodic parts, which kind of defined the latter era of Death too, right? And yeah, so those two songs like always stood out. Got the CD, listened to it pretty much till I wore the CD off. Was delighted that somebody uploaded the album on YouTube eventually. Was delighted when the album eventually in its original shape got hosted on Apple Music. Immediately added it, immediately downloaded it, and now it's awesome. Excellent that there is. Sorry?
So you were the guy who downloaded it.
KP still like that's the royalties that KP saw.
Yeah, the additional cents that you got in your account that month were probably due to me then.
Right.
Yeah, but
thanks, man. I really appreciate all of that, and that's pretty much I think why all of us were trying to make that kind of music, to like make people feel things like what you described you felt listening. It's an honor to be able to write something that people actually want to listen to like that off their own account.
We talked about us. What is the song that you're the most proudest of on the album? Or your proudest of?
It is Use the Pain. It is definitely Use the Pain, and the reason why is because more because of the lyrics than the music. I think the music fit the lyrics really well. So I wrote the lyrics about depression and about like trying to write my way out of depression, like write music, and about how you can't really generate music that you can be proud of if you don't have a certain amount of sadness or depression or loss or negative emotions of some sort to uh, to get that stuff from the creative juices from, and that was very personal. So every time I performed it, it was like extremely cathartic, and it felt good to play that song. And I don't think I ever got bored of playing that song, because it's not about anger. It's not about, it's not, the reason Layers got boring was because after a point, people are hypocritical. They are, a lot of them are assholes and idiots and whatever, but you get bored of saying that. But when you're talking about an introspective topic like Use the Pain, I personally don't get bored of that, because it's cathartic in a different way each time based on whatever you're going through at that point in time.
How happy were you with the original release as an album?
I was reasonably happy, because I don't think the guitar sounded as good as it should have sounded, and there were reasons for it. There was a certain lack of expensive equipment used in the recording. There were a couple things, like we didn't have like fully dry tracks for the solos, because there were some effects that like the wah pedal and things like that were needed to be recorded, and that's a human thing, right? You can't really, I mean, you could technically draw filter lines on a digital audio workstation and make that happen, but it won't sound good. So it has to be recorded directly, and that meant that the tone was baked in, which wasn't ideal. So there were some issues like that. Anupam's managed to work around a lot of the tonal mismatches between the rhythm tone and the solo tone. Like, he's done a great job during this process. But the initial time, you could like immediately hear the patch changing when the rhythm went into the solo, and I like absolutely hated that. But we couldn't figure out what to do about it. So, it was what it was. So that was one thing I didn't like. Another thing was we had like another 3 or 4 songs that we'd written, and we didn't put it on the album. And I do have some regrets about that, because we used to play those live. I've completely forgotten them now. I don't think there are any recordings, but there were at least 3 full songs that we had gotten down together as band. We played them at a couple shows in the States over here as well. But I wouldn't be able to like remember even a single riff from any of them. So that is a regret. I wish we included more songs in the album as well.
Over the last decade or so, how many times have you gone back and listened to the album again, the original edition as such? How has that experience been? Was it, were you showing it off to people, or were you like, this is,
usually
were you taking a trip down to memory lane of sorts?
Maybe a couple times, but only when I'm like going through old stuff on my hard drives and trying to figure out what it was, and then I'll find, I recorded this at this point, and then I'll like get into this wormhole of listening to stuff. Also when showing it to people, because a lot of people who I meet now don't know me as a live musician, and I look different. I don't have the long hair. I don't play gigs anymore. So sometimes it's nice to kind of broaden, close friends. Of course, I don't like abuse my colleagues with the music all the time, but
or don't walk into like something wearing a Cannibal Corpse t-shirt or a Dead t-shirt.
Oh, that I do.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I work at Fender, dude. Like, everyone wears shit like that.
Nice.
Yeah, like if you walk into the offices wearing a Cannibal Corpse shirt, at least 80% of the people would have heard Cannibal Corpse.
Nice.
It's not. Yeah, it's a fantastic place to work at.
So when you did go back and listen to the album again, when you revisited it, for whatever reason it may have been, how was that experience like? Did it manage to hold up to your benchmark of sorts?
I think so. I kind of drifted in a slightly different direction with Fractline after Myndsnare. I think Myndsnare has a lot of the thrash and speed metal kind of stuff in it that Fractline didn't really. And I'm actually, in my listening, I'm closer to that than I am to the Fractline music. Fractline was a lot more technically challenging to play and write and perform. Myndsnare, it was hard enough because I was singing and playing, so that made it more complicated anyway. I'm not really sure how to answer that question, really, though.
Let's put it this way. Early recordings of the stuff that I've been part of, I hate listening to them because they just sound cringy as shit, right?
Right.
And at that point in time, obviously, when you record them, it would have been the greatest thing on planet Earth. But when you listen back, you would just be like criticizing yourself about, damn, I wish I could have done this. I wish I had the experience that I have now.
Right.
And then there's stuff that that you've been part of, that you record, and it seems like the perfect recording of the time and place that you were supposed to be in your life at that point in time.
I think Conditioned Human is kind of like that. I think the Preliminary Quest and the Myndsnare One thing, which none of you have mentioned yet, and I hope you don't listen to it. But those two are kind of cringy, especially the Myndsnare One thing, which some unfortunate soul has uploaded to YouTube. So you can listen to it if you want. That is really bad. That's the one. Earlier, when I was talking about recording at home through a sound card and stuff, I was referring to Myndsnare 1, not Preliminary Quest. Preliminary Quest was in a studio, but not a very good studio. It was recorded on tape and stuff. It wasn't recorded on a computer.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, yeah, the Myndsnare 1 thing is like cringy. Very cringy. I mean, even you guys will cringe and you'll probably decide not to have this podcast after that.
Nah.
Or maybe it'll become maybe it'll become, or whatever. We'll get into rarities as such and unreleased stuff a bit later.
Okay. So, now that the album is being released by Subcontinental Records and, Arun was on the podcast a few months ago when he released Moral Corrupt. So he kind of gave us an exclusive of sorts. But tell us from your perspective, like what sparked the idea to get this done? I mean, how did that happen?
So basically, Arun just wrote us all an email one day and said that he thinks it'll be a good time to do a remaster, and that, he helped us set up the release show in Bangalore for the album as well, like back then. So we spoke about it and spoke to Anupam, and Anupam was excited about it because because Conditioned Human had been one of his first like proper metal things back then, especially with live drums and stuff like that, and he wanted to redo it now, given all the learning over the last 12, 13 years. And he's been active constantly throughout all that time. So he's been gaining a lot of experience. So, yeah, it seemed like a good thing. We knew we weren't going to be creating any more music. So if we have a chance to make it sound better, might as well just do that and leave it at that. There's no reason to say no. If nobody really cares about it, nobody cares about it. That's fine. But at least we'll have a better quality rendition of the same songs.
Okay. So this time around, when you started work on it as such, was there any blueprint drawn or references given to Anupam, or did he already know what kind of sound you guys wanted as such? What was the approach really like this time?
The approach was basically giving all the stems and the raw guitar tracks and stuff. Like I have it saved on the cloud somewhere, and I just like sent it to him, and it was up to him to do whatever he wanted, basically. And we trusted him to do what he thought was right. And obviously, we had like 4 or 5 back and forths of pre-final mixes and masters and stuff like that. And we gave some feedback. It wasn't like any major feedback because there were no edits to be done, right? All the edits were frozen in place anyway. And usually that's the more complicated thing. Like there is this little piece over here that's not fitting correctly and things, but that was already done and we couldn't change it even if we wanted to. So it was just sound, and he's pretty good at it. So it wasn't that hard to get something that we were.
I'm sure Anupam will be like, thanks for the compliment. KP, pretty good.
What's weird is
emphasized pretty good. He wouldn't have agreed to do this again if it wasn't something he was interested in. And I know that he really enjoys mixing Yas's drums as well, because she hits with a lot of power. There's a lot of definition. There's a lot of dynamics in the recording. So there's a lot to work with. And that can also make an engineer's job, harder but more rewarding, because it's going to sound better when you get things right. Yeah, like we didn't really have to tell him what to do or anything of that sort whatsoever. Even the first time around, like even the time that Frackline played in India, the show we did in Delhi, he came out and did the sound for us, and it was great.
Good.
And the time before that I played in Bangalore, I think it was for the Bangalore Metal Project during the NH7 festival. He was doing the sound over there as well, and like somehow he manages to get my shitty voice to sound halfway decent live, which is great.
So, first of all, I must give you kudos for actually having, the stems and all the recordings on cloud, because a lot of the Indian bands that we talk to, right, especially from that era, have no idea where the recordings are. I mean, they're like, oh, it's on the studio's hard drive, and I think they deleted it and all of that. So yeah, I'm glad at least you've got that. But take us back to that time, because you talked about there were like 5 or 6 revisions in terms of the mixes and all of that.
Right.
Take us back to the time that you actually heard the first track. Like, what was the feeling then?
Oh, it felt like a modern album finally, because it sounded at the same time smoother and slicker, but more powerful and direct at the same time, which is really nice, because I really do not enjoy listening to extreme metal that doesn't have good production, because it's just annoying after a point. But this sounded friendly to the ear without taking away any of the in-your-faceness that it needs to have to sound the way we want it to sound. And that, I think, is the thing that only a good engineer can bring up, because you need it to sound heavy and brutal and and metal, but at the same time you want it to have the quality that if you listen to that kind of tone for 10 hours on end, your ears shouldn't get tired, and that balance is like not easy.
Yeah, especially when you have instruments that are doing so much, and
Right.
not everything is sticking to the root note or just following one melody. And
everything needs space.
Space. Exactly. Yeah, it's not your traditional pop song as such, where it needs to just sound like one hummable melody at the end of the day. Each and every part needs to be heard in its own unique way.
In Use the Pain, if you know the song, Sandy's bass parts take on prominence at a few places in the song. And with a lot of people, we'd have to like tell the engineer that this needs to happen at this point and stuff. But, Anupam knows the genre, he knows the songs, he knows us, so it just happens. It's like magic. It's pretty cool.
So is this the way you intended for the album to sound in the first place, given if you had the chance to do it over?
Yeah, totally. This would have been like we'd have been extremely happy if it had sounded like this the first time. You don't know how it's going to sound in the future that makes the past version sound worse. So like we were really happy with how it sounded at that point as well.
Okay, so the thing is, while Arun did talk to us about the remaster coming out and the reissue of the album and all of that, but it just suddenly dropped, right? Earlier this month.
Right.
Did you expect it to generate a buzz like it has?
Has it generated a buzz? I'm sitting a little far away from you guys. I mean, I know of the Rolling Stone India thing, the write-up, and I think they added Use the Paint to the playlist or something, some Spotify playlist. They tagged my Instagram account with that, and there's you guys. But what are the buzz? I don't know if there's any other buzz.
There are a bunch of 30, 40-year-olds right now who probably like on and use their credit cards or credit cards and debit cards which they didn't exist. Right. And now suddenly they've got hit with like,
a lot more downloads coming your way on Apple Music.
Yeah. Or suddenly like Bandcamp, Bandcamp suddenly you see like Myndsnare back. Who's this band, right? New and notable on Bandcamp.
Oh, really?
No, I'm just saying. Cool. No, I'm just saying that will be kind of funny to see, right?
Yeah. No, but at the same time, what's weird is that yes, we joke about it, but there is talk, there is appreciation of the fact that Myndsnare have gone out and done this, and yes, it may be a lot of, it may be just fueled by a nostalgia trip of sorts, but
right.
There is appreciation. And people are looking forward to this release, just given the kind of people we've spoken to about it, right? Having said that, though, how is there any expectation from your side as to how this remaster is going to be received?
No, not really. I mean, from our side, it was more for kind of selfish reasons, like wanting to have a better quality recording of the thing that we can remember it by in the long run. When we are like 70 years old and we need hearing aids, we can actually hear something that sounds a little better. But I think Arun also wanted to release this on his label because he wanted certain types of music on his label, and he didn't have enough of certain types of music, so he thought it'll kill two birds with one stone as well. I think that was another motivation. But expectations wise, we aren't going to be a band again, so of what point is any expectation? If we were going to be playing live, then we'd have a lot of expectations. We'd want to see what kind of shows we can get because of where this has reached and how many people might turn out to those shows, that kind of stuff. And that's what I'm used to. But now, since I don't have a live band, none of that matters anymore. So what happens. Yeah.
Okay. So now I know you did mention earlier that there were 3-4 Myndsnare songs that, you never ended up putting to record, right? And right. It wasn't there. But while you all were discussing the reissue and the remaster, was there a chat on adding, other songs, or, probably like a lot of, you've seen major labels do it, right? Or especially, forget everyone else, just see the Blacklist, right? Where them releasing a bunch of like demos and all of that.
I mean, I kind of thought about that, but I didn't even get to the point of suggesting that to either of the other two, because it would mean a lot of work. And right now, I just can't see that we've got the time and bandwidth to be able to do that. At least I don't, because between work and the kid and the amount of time I keep aside for myself, I just don't have time to do that. And man, kids take a lot of time. Do either of you have kids? Sandy and Yas didn't suggest anything like that either. Neither did Arun. So, yeah.
So 13 years have passed since the album first came out, right? And a lot of people will actually be discovering the album and hopefully discovering Myndsnare because of this remaster and this reissue. Would you say that the songs on Conditioned Human remain relevant today? Do you think as an album and as songs, these songs have
Yeah.
kind of matured well?
I think lyrically, a lot of the songs are actually more relevant today than they were back then because honestly, I don't think any of us thought shit would hit the fan this bad in the next 10 years. Even before the pandemic, like at least sitting in the US, it was really nuts having someone like Trump as like the fucking president. And, you know, India is in an interesting state right now as well. So that kind of thing is what a lot of the songs were about. It was, you know, layers of hypocrisy is like something.
You beat me to it. I was just going to be like, at this point, like every point, you can just hear the riffs play for layers of hypocrisy as you were talking.
Right. And there's a lot of Conditioned Human itself is about a lot of things that condition people into being who they are. And a lot of it is about religion, about, you know, like religion is a big part of that. And I'm obviously an atheist, and I think religion is something that was really good at controlling people for a really long time. But right now it's doing a lot of harm. And I think that's going to remain true for a long time. I think that kind of thing is going to be relevant for a long time, as long as religions exist, which, you know, it's not going away anytime soon. And like to take another song like Use the Pain, depression being the source of creativity is probably always going to be a thing. And Alter Ego is another song that Yas had the idea for, and we co-wrote the lyrics. That's a song about. I think we were talking about like some performers like Shaldener and a few others that we really felt strongly about, and it's a song about how they are important only as long as their audience is satisfied, and as long as they put out music that doesn't satisfy the audience, or they behave in a way that doesn't satisfy the audience, they're gone and it doesn't matter anymore. So it's from the point of view of a person like that, talking about how they exist only as long as the audience is kept satisfied, and how kind of shitty that is in a lot of ways. So that kind of thing is also, you know, that's a little metaphysical kind of or whatever, but I think the relevance of that kind of lyrical theme is not going to change because it is tied to the human condition. And musically, I think a lot of the stuff in that album is going to probably remain relevant in a more retro thrash kind of way rather than what we thought it was technical metal then. It may or may not be that now, because after Gent has come along, and after, you know, with bands like Animals as Leaders, Periphery, Meshuggah has always been there, and they're fucking crazy. But a lot of the new tech stuff is like way more tech than anything we were able to or will be able to do. So I don't know whether that's going to stay relevant, but in a more retro thrash kind of way, I think probably, maybe.
Okay. So how would you like Conditioned Human and overall as such Myndsnare to be remembered?
Personally speaking, if it made more people read the lyrics and introspect and start really thinking about things that they take for granted and just accept it as the way it is. If they start thinking about those things in a rational, critical way, that would basically be the goal of the album. That's it. It's not even about the music that much. It's about like critical thinking.
Alrighty then, I think it's about time that we play a few of the tracks from the reissue. You heard on the chat that our favorites are Use the Pain and Layers of Hypocrisy. So let's play them back to back, starting with Use the Pain.
Use the same pain. Wait for the day to end. Use the same pain. Where must it go? There is to stand. Use the same pain. You'll be a gun. Creating the end. A solid run. Oh, in your head. Back in the dead stop line. Open the stand. Where everything grows the point of a total blackness. Like an eclipse right. A corroded head. Keep your head up.
You just heard Use the Pain and Layers of Hypocrisy from the remixed and remastered reissue of Conditioned Human by Myndsnare, a feed pulled off by Subcontinental Records.
And now let's get into a chat with the band's bassist, Sandesh Nagarajan, or as we better know him, Sandy. Hi Sandesh, welcome to Horns Up. Where are you at the moment and what's keeping you busy these days?
Yeah, thanks so much for the invite. So I'm in Seattle, in Washington, and I'm doing my doctoral studies here in music composition at the University of Washington, where I'm also a teaching assistant. So I'll be starting that this fall. Moved here in 2018 to do grad school. Yeah, so that's keeping me busy, that teaching and a lot of music.
Yeah, no wonder you have so many, or you can keep up with all the bands and all of that. That totally makes sense. All right. But, we're here to talk to you about the reissue of the Myndsnare album Conditioned Human, which is releasing 13 years, right? Post when it first came out. So, quick reaction from you. Does it really feel like it's been 13 years?
It does. I don't know. It seems like it happened a long time ago. Yeah. But also I think 16, I think, when I joined the band, and 17 when I recorded the album. So yeah, I'm 33 now. So it was a while ago.
Okay, we don't have to put this. So now I totally get why when I showed the album release video to KP, he's like, we literally picked up Sandesh. Now it makes sense why you look that young, because you were like, oh my God, you were just like still in your teenage, man.
Yeah. I was like, I have no idea what I was doing, but yeah.
Take us back to that time. I mean, like, what were some of the standout memories? Because you just said that you were still a teenager at that time when you joined the band.
I was like 16, I think, or maybe just turning 17 when they asked me to play. And I looked up to like Myndsnare growing up, Myndsnare, Cryptos. These were like bands that I would take a bus, like public transport, 2 buses to this like venue to like see these guys. And I was playing in a band called Extinct Reflections at the time. Yeah, and I was like fans of these guys. And when they asked me to play bass, I was like kind of surprised. I was like, me? Why? And they're like, oh no, you'd be a good fit, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I joined the band, and it was kind of like everything happened really quick. They told me that they were in the process of recording an album, and so I had to learn all the songs pretty quick and like practice. And I'd never played bass in a band before, so it took a little bit of time to like just understand what it means to be a bass player in a band, because a lot of us guitar players end up falling into this like rut of playing bass like a guitar, and which also worked out because there's like in the album, and I just listened to it, there's like a lot of like melodies and stuff that's been played on the bass, which kind of complements what KP's doing. But yeah, so they told me, like we're going to start recording soon. So I learned all the stuff, and we went into the studio. I did all the bass parts at Yasmin's home studio. Yeah, it was like pretty crazy because, I mean, especially the drum tracking, because, we didn't use any click track or anything. And Yasmin was just knocking all the songs just like out of the park in like single takes sometimes. And, that was like awesome to like witness. While she was recording, I remember I was in the control booth just like learning the songs. And I was kind of, intimidated and a little scared because I wanted to do a good job, So yeah, it was pretty intense. It was a lot of fun, an amazing learning experience. And honestly, I'm pretty proud of it. Like when I heard it, after such a long time, I'm like, yeah, man, this sounds pretty good, Like I'd show this to my kids.
This is very interesting because I didn't think or I didn't know that this was your first album as a bassist as such. How did you like just wrap your head around all of this? The fact, and as you said, like because you looked up to these guys, the pressure was clearly on.
Yeah, no, it was. And things happened very quick in the beginning, and I didn't have time to like think too much, so which was a good thing because I had to just like get things done. So I just had to figure it out, and I just remember spending pretty much all day for like months just practicing bass at home, learning all the hard riffs and stuff, and at the same time going to school, playing with Extinct. And but I never like got stressed out. It was like a lot of fun because I love doing this stuff. So just somehow figured it out. I think when you're just like in the fire, you just you don't have a choice but to just like.
The bass parts then, how much of them were already there, or like was the foundation already there, or were you just told, hey, here's the canvas, here's what I'm doing, here's what Yasmin is doing, do your thing?
I would say it's like 60% do whatever, and 40% here's what the guitars and drums are doing, do this kind of thing. Yeah, and I think they had a lot of trust in me, and we worked on one song together where I wrote the bass parts, Changing Skins, and I think that gave them a lot of confidence, and then they were like, yeah, just we can do whatever you want, kind of thing.
What was the most challenging song to write and to record? Do you remember?
I think Within a Mind, Misshapen, that was pretty hard because there's like some parts where we decided it would sound cool to have the bass double the guitar and not follow the drums, and the riffs were like pretty hard to play on the guitar itself, and like playing that on the bass, trying to figure out, okay, how can I play this without making it sound, like got to figure out like muting and like not letting the strings ring out, and you can't, like I'm saying, like you can't play it like a guitar. So there was a lot of like that kind of stuff. So I would, yeah, I mean, I don't know, all the songs were hard, but I think that was like the hardest.
Okay, and which one was the one that you thoroughly enjoyed playing and maybe still do? I don't know if you've ever revisited playing these songs in the recent past, but yeah.
Not, but I remember Temporal Movements was my favorite one to play.
All right. So, for me personally, the one of the highlights of the album is Layers of Hypocrisy. I know like KP was like, oh my God, like that song, because he's like kind of over it. But yeah, for me, I mean, I remember hearing it on Preliminary Quest and then like hearing it on the album, and I could kind of see the difference. And now hearing it on the reissue with the remaster and everything that Anupam's done, it kind of takes a new life, right?
My favorite tracks of the album are Use the Pain and Temporal Movements, which is great, right? Yeah. And so the question then essentially like is, what's the song that you are the most proudest of? We know that Temporal Movements is the song that you enjoy most, but is that the one that you're most proud of as well?
Well, maybe Changing Skins. If you ask me which song you mean in terms of like the bass parts, right?
In terms of,
is it because you wrote the bass parts?
Your perspective, man.
I think Temporal Movements.
Temporal Movements. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it just moves so hard and it's melodic, and yeah, I think that stuck with me the most, and I really enjoyed just playing that live, because also I could just like let go and just like play and not think too much.
And now obviously just talk to us a little bit about Changing Skins.
Oh yeah, that was the first song where like I joined the band and they were like, okay, you're like writing the song, so we would want you to like come up with your own bass parts, and then I just went all out and like tried to impress them as much as I can. I think, and there's like this tapping bass part for like the solo backing, which I spent like weeks just like coming up with like something that would like work, and which I'm pretty proud of, and they loved it too. So yeah, and I guess that's the song that kind of gave them like the trust too. So
all right, so considering this was the first album that you recorded, how happy were you with the original release?
Oh yeah, I remember being super excited. Yeah, we were at a bar in Bombay with the Bionic Mouth guys, getting like hammered on Long Island iced tea, and I think we were playing like ping pong or something. And like I remember Sahil showed up many hours later, with like a box of CDs that like freshly pressed, and I remember like holding the CD, and I was like really proud and really excited. And there were like all these plans about like playing shows and kind of doing like a CD release thing. Yeah, I remember being like super excited and just like being on the road and like playing.
Yeah, that was like tours back then, right? Yeah. So I must ask you, I mean, like, over the last decade or so, because it's like your first album, right, that you recorded and stuff. How often or how many times have you kind of gone back to listen to it and Like, what do you think? I mean, like, honestly.
Okay, so in the last like decade or so, I think I've listened to that album maybe twice.
But is it something that you like show as reference that to your friends or peers or whoever now that you're studying at music school, right?
Not really. No, I've never until recently, until like it got like remixed and remastered. I showed it to like a couple of my friends here, but yeah, I was like, I think we were all kind of like pretty removed from it because we, just went on doing other things, but sometimes I would get like nostalgic and like put it on, but I don't know, maybe just twice in like the last 10 years, 12 years.
Okay, so fair enough. Since you said that, you're kind of removed from the whole thing, especially like, it's been so many years. And of course, you've done a variety of like different kinds of music now. But take me back to that moment where you first heard like the first track or the entire album together remastered once Anupam kind of dropped it on, I don't know, Dropbox or something like that.
Yeah, I was like really happy when I first heard it because it had been so long. And I think that actually, I'm glad that I didn't, like, I was like so far removed from it because when I heard it, it was like super fresh. It was as though I listened to it for the first time. And it didn't really feel like I was like part of the band either. It was like as though I was listening to like a band that I was not part of, which I think was good because like I was able to like enjoy the music without associating with it that way. And I just remember like I'd forgotten like so many parts and like so many like even like songs even, and I was like, whoa, I mean, I don't know, it felt like super fresh and like and that's when I thought, again, like after like 12 13 years or something, that man, this is really good, and especially like the drum performance and stuff is like insane. And having heard like so many metal albums and like played with different metal drummers and stuff, I'm still like, wow, like Yasmin just kicked ass, and like there was like no like, it's like pure performance. There's like no like, I don't know, like sample whatever like replacement thing and like program stuff or whatever. It's just like everything she's played is what it is, and like it's pretty crazy that we did that. So
does what you hear on the remaster still hold up?
Yeah, I think if it was done, if I joined the band, let's say when I was like, if I was already playing bass for a while and I was like super proficient in it, I feel like it would have sounded more polished. But when I listen to it, like it sounds more, I don't know, it has like some youthfulness to it. Which is what I like. I think it doesn't sound like too pristine, and so it kind of, it's a snapshot of like where we were and where I was, and I think there's some truth to that. So
how do you expect the master to be received as such? Do you think it'll all just be fueled by a huge nostalgia trip, not just for the creators but also for all the listeners?
It would be great to like have new audience receive this record too, because I think it's a really good record. But initially, the guys in the band, we were like kind of worried that the first initial posts that was made, we were like, oh, we're going to disappoint fans because they're thinking we're getting back together and writing new music, but it's just like the same shit that's being like remixed and remastered. So there was that, but I think it'll be received well because you can like hear the parts. Like, I mean, it has come to like, it's taken a new life, I think, this recording now. And so I feel like at least like, Myndsnare fans would be happy to hear the record in like this new light. There's some like freshness to it, and there's like, it's
final question then. How would you like Myndsnare and Conditioned Human to be remembered?
Well, maybe remembered as like a record that was, that's like really unique, and raw, and I don't know. It is.
Okay. How do you remember Conditioned Human? How do you think like you will be remembering this album, say, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line? For you personally,
Yeah.
at a personal level.
I feel like it was made at a time when we all had like some amazing, like rich musical experiences. There was a lot of music happening, just even in the scene at that point. I remember like, my band Extinct was like playing shows. There was Cryptos, there was Myndsnare, there were like some other like projects happening around. There was Boomy, and it just felt like the atmosphere was like pretty electric at the point, at least for me, because I was like 16 and starry-eyed. So I was like, whoa, there's so much music happening and it's all awesome. I think that's what I'll remember. I think I'll remember like how much music there was happening every single day, and there was just so much excitement.
I think it's pretty clear from our chats that the band itself is pretty proud of the reissue, right? Let's play a couple of more songs from the reissue. The two songs that both KP and Sandy spoke about, Changing Skins and Temporal Movements.
Every day I do pain. Every day I do skin on now. I am me within. The center of me. No need to still this. Breath to taste that motion. Into gold. A break of filled with nothing. Calm explosive force. The man's with me. Go the devastating force. My new will. Vitality
Cool. So that was Changing Skins and Temporal Movements from Myndsnare's Conditioned Human, the reissue. Man, how good does this reissue sound, right? Like Anupam, I think, has done a super job. And yes, we're working on getting him on the pod to talk about it and a whole lot more. And yes, super kudos to Arun as well for managing to get this done, because this is something that definitely deserved it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if the original album had this sound, the band and the album would definitely have been a much bigger deal than what it was. Right, Peter?
Honestly, this was a time where the internet was just getting hold of, that there was metal in India, right? And when we were talking to KP and Sandy, right, they were talking about how everyone was kind of amazed at it, right? And think about it, right? 13 years later, we're still talking about this album. People are still getting blown away that this was released in 2008. So yeah, I mean, of course, hindsight is 2020, but yeah, this would have been a huge deal back then with this sound.
I'm glad that it's happened now, nonetheless. Okay, so that's been one of the most detailed episodes we've done. I just wish we could have had a chat with Yasmin as well to completely round this one off.
Yasmin, I hope if you're listening to this episode, I hope you agree with us. That's all we have on the show today. But before we go, here's a question for whoever's still listening. Is there any other Indian metal release that deserves a reissue? Let us know. Write into hornsuppod.com or on Twitter, we're at hornsuppod.
Or reach out to us personally. I'm on Twitter at Asmoani.
I'm at Trend Crusher.
This is Horns Up.
Horns up, guys.